can, go camp on the property for a little while and just like observe the natural phenomena. And it's sort of so like I envision like camping on this property and like being swept away in a flood and like.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, a weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Editorial Director of Fine Homebuilding and Green Building Advisor, Andrew Zellner.
Morning, Patrick.
Operations Manager for TDS Custom Construction, Ian Schwant.
Hello.
And our producer, Jeff Rose.
Hi.
Please email your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. Oh, guys, I am so glad to see you. So this morning has been very busy, and part of it is, sometimes I get a little amped up before the show because it's, I want it to be good, and, it's live to tape, so what you see is what you get. But this morning, I was in the passenger seat as my 16-year-old son Liam was driving to his school, which is like 20 miles away. So that was way more stressful than this ever is in the worst scenario. So I think I have a cramp in my foot from like tensing it.
Hitting the phantom brake on the passenger side.
Phantom brake, phantom gas, phantom like turning, phantom of, no, I've never had to teach someone how to drive. I've taught people how to drive a stick shift, and, they get it right away or they don't, but it's, they know how to drive usually beforehand, so that part of it is out of the equation. Have you all ever had to teach someone to drive?
I haven't.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I think it takes a special kind of person. It might explain why my driver's ed instructor in high school chain smoked cigarettes and drank bottomless thermoses of coffee, throughout the day. So
I enjoyed the Saturday morning driver's ed classes where the teacher would come in with a wicked hangover and just tell you to drive around for an hour and then switch. We'd go through the drive-through at McDonald's.
Yeah, I have great respect for anyone who does that work. Please be patient with student drivers out on the road. I would tell everybody else. I bought a pair of magnetic signs from Amazon to put on the CRV, which seems to make folks a little more patient with the sometimes erratic driving of a new driver.
So I guess I haven't really thought about how folks drive in Connecticut versus like in the Midwest. Is there a little bit more intensity there, Patrick?
That might be a record-breaking understatement, Andrew.
Well, we're not talking about Massachusetts here. We're talking about Connecticut.
So rural Massachusetts, rural Connecticut are, less crazy than urban areas, but it's all pretty intense. It's kill or be killed.
And none of the roads are straight. There, that I think that's the big thing. Is like you're
secondary roads are very twisty, very hilly, and very narrow. It's
and they don't have
old.
a ditch; they just have trees lining right up to the edge of the pavement.
Or large granite boulders is another thing you see by the side of the road.
Nice stone walls.
Stone walls. Deer share the road with you.
What's the
Kent Hollow area where you have your BS and beer in Connecticut is lined with the boulders along the roads.
It's very beautiful in places, right? I mean, it's stunningly lovely roads for touring around. Less so teaching a new driver how to navigate them.
What's the timetable for Liam getting his driver's license?
So that's a good question. I think the state of Connecticut requires a period of time. I think it was 120 days. And, then you have to have a certain number of hours behind the wheel before you can take the road test. Our hope is to get him, safe and independent as soon as possible because it'll save so much driving to his school, right? It'll be half as much driving. We had a rideshare partner last year, but this year it's just us. So I'm hoping he can drive to school in our very sensible 2003 Honda CRV.
Is he going? So like one of the thing in where I grew up in Wisconsin, like we have snow, but I turned 16 in August, and like took the spring like driving course and got my hours in, and so like I was licensed before I had driven in snow or ice, and that was like a whole other learning experience. Do you have a plan for that?
On-demand four-wheel drive.
Okay.
So the winter here in southern Connecticut is not bad. We do get periods of ice, which is horrible and sometimes comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But we're gonna not send him to school if it's crazy. They cancel it pretty readily because of school buses, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can't be navigating the narrow, twisty, steep roads. Carol's turn this afternoon. Thank goodness. Ian, you sent me photos of your concrete pour. I think it looks almost as good as it did when it was just formwork, I gotta say.
Yeah, the guys did a great job with it. I tried to send you a video of the setup that we had with the conveyor and the pump truck and the concrete truck down at the end of the road. It was a pretty big undertaking that they did to pour that.
Wait a minute.
little
So,
wall.
can you explain that more, please?
So we had the truck was parked, a couple 100 feet away from the property, and then we had a conveyor truck with like I guess it kind of was maybe a snorkel pump on the end of it. That then the concrete would go through that pump into the conveyor, up the conveyor, and then into the formwork, and then just get vibrated down. But it was coming from a long ways away. I didn't quite realize that they were going that excessive with it. I thought they were going to be able to get the conveyor truck much closer than they did.
How did you get it the rest of the way?
Well, the conveyor truck, the end of it reached the top of the formwork. So it was just a matter of the concrete being placed from the truck into the pump conveyor truck and then out to the form.
I bet it didn't take long once it got going. That is one of the great things about concrete, if there is any.
Yeah, I think they started at maybe 2:30 or 2:45. I think the trucks were there setting up at 2. So pretty quick.
So you were done by when?
I think they were done by the normal end of the day for us, the 3:45, 4 o'clock.
It looks like it turned out fine. There's no honeycombing or any weirdness in the concrete.
No, it looks like they did a great job after we get off here. That's one of my stops today to go take a look at it.
Awesome.
It's nice to be able to do that stuff as a small contractor. I'm sure a lot of people listening to the podcast have considered doing small concrete jobs themselves, and we've put a lot of effort into setting our crews up to do small things like that over the last 6 months, and it's kept us working when we needed a project to start sooner than a trade partner could get in there.
What do you recommend for training for concrete work, such as what you did?
It helps to have somebody on staff who's done a fair amount of it. I did a decent amount in the Carpenters Union, but one of our project managers has done quite a bit over his multi-decade career. So he's been the one spearheading it. But the one thing we've settled on is picking 1 or 2 methods and getting really good at it. So either getting good at ICF work or getting good at these plywood forms like we did for that irregular shape, or getting good with the Simon's forms.
Jeff, have you done anything as interesting as Ian's concrete pour?
No, not nearly as interesting.
Have you been working on the house or getting ready for winter, which seems like it's on its way quickly?
Not a whole lot. I did a little appliance repair on Saturday,
What'd you have to do?
I replaced the front gasket on our front-loading washing machine. which is kind of different sort of a job than I've ever done on an appliance. So it's kind of
Is the gasket on the door or on the machine?
Yes. No, it's on the machine, but it goes from the outer drum to the housing, the body of the washing machine, and so that the door closes into it. So it's
Did you learn how to do this through a YouTube video?
a little bit, but each manufacturer has their own variation of it. So it was kind of learn as you go.
What prompted the gasket replacement?
It was basically drooling. A little bit of water coming out of the bottom of the door.
He likes an adventure. It's a challenge. He's just like, I'm just going to try changing this.
Well, it's like that preemptive maintenance you need to do, right?
Yeah, well,
Appliance repair?
it was definitely, it was time, because the gasket gets stretched and stiff and doesn't seal as well. And now it's like you have to really push the door closed until it locks.
Worked first try?
Yeah.
Good. Andrew, are you still working on your upstairs air barrier?
Yes. Yeah, so the big project this last weekend was sort of more prep work to kind of dive into our upstairs floor, and kind of figuring out a strategy for sealing some of the large holes in the side of my house and in our upstairs that we discovered when our friend Randy Williams did a blower door test on my house. And like everyone, it doesn't feel like the summer has been long or anything, and now all of a sudden it's like cool and a little fall-like at night, and it's those holes in the house feel a little bit more urgent to remedy. Yeah, absolutely.
It's weird. It seems to happen so suddenly, but yet it happens every year. I don't know what it is.
Then the other thing I was thinking about, so I've got, a home security system and some smart speakers, and we're getting this new fiber internet, and I was thinking a lot about smart homes and how smart I would like my home to be, how smart. And then I was curious, Patrick, how smart you would like your home to be, and Ian as well, especially having built a new home. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in our after show podcast.
That should be fun. I think that's a great idea.
Smart homes and dumb homes.
I was going to say smart homes and dumb hosts.
This comes from our friend Jonathan in Silver Spring, Maryland. Morning, gents. I hesitate to share this story, but will do so as a PSA. A few years ago, when we were under contract to buy our current house, we did a radon test at the recommendation of our realtor. Only a few years after buying the house did we learn that radon probably cut short the life of one of its occupants. The radon test showed 45 and 53 picocuries per liter, more than 10 times the EPA action level of 4. The sellers installed a radon mitigation pump, and the post-installation test read an acceptable 2.5 picocuries. Fast forward a few years, I'm chatting with my next-door neighbor. He shares that one of the prior residents who lived in the basement in our house died of lung cancer in his 60s. The prior owners also asked my neighbor what radon was when the house was under contract. This leads me to believe they had no idea of the risk. A radon expert from the county told me that 53 picos per curie per liter was the highest local reading he is aware of. And so Jonathan's was very close to that, 53. Unrelated, radon tests are now a mandatory part of the home buying process in our jurisdiction. As houses tighten up, we have to be more careful about this silent killer, Jonathan. Well, he's totally right? I think this was in reference to our discussion about radon in the root cellar, right? Which we still don't know if radon can be absorbed by fruits and vegetables, but we definitely know you can breathe it, and it's very dangerous. Any thoughts, guys? Have you had radon action levels in your homes?
So speaking of smart homes, I also have an AirThings air quality meter that I bought mostly because it regularly checks your radon levels. And I cycle from 2 to 6 kind of throughout the year. And so when I installed my drain tile, I also put in a radon mitigation system, and that has helped quite a bit. It's down in the 0 to 1, really. So
Without a fan, Andrew, right?
no, I did put a fan.
Oh, you
on
have a
it.
fan, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Jonathan, thank you for the reminder. This comes from Jerry. Hello, podcasters. I can't remember which episode, but recently someone asked about using drywall ceiling grid. I work for a residential remodel company, and we do this all the time in basements. I believe Armstrong, he thinks. I think it's USG. Maybe they both make it, but I'm familiar with the USG product. The main lines hang from wires on special eye screws 4 feet on center with intermediate support crossings at 16 inches on center. They also make steel angle pieces that get nailed around the perimeter. We buy the material at FBM, Foundation Building Material, near us. Not sure what their reach is. The obvious advantage is being able to hang wires around obstacles in the ceiling, but we've used the angled steel to help solve drywall backing problems too and build soffits. In episode 489, you asked what fasteners people always carry. I'm a project manager at our company, so I bounce around a few job sites on any given day, and my truck is always stocked with little of this and that, and extends beyond fasteners. Fire foam, silicone, window tape, broom and dustpan, masking tape, painter's tape, half-inch shark bite caps. I love that one. That is something we should probably carry in our pockets. Floor protection get the most use. For fasteners, I try to have them all, but commonly missed ones to carry are positive placement nails because framers miss them occasionally, drywall screws, common electrical screws, and a few lengths. So I totally agree with that. I have a bunch of common machine electrical screws in my electrical toolkit, and they come in very handy. If I don't use them with a new fixture, I save them, and I've probably got them that go back decades by this point. 2.5-inch door hinge screws in multiple colors. These I have to order, but it's worth it. I would love to hear what others stock up on. When you discussed the test that another listener had to take to become an owner builder, it got me thinking about the license exam in Michigan. Our state requires you to take a 40-hour course first, declare that you are of upstanding moral character, then pass a 90-minute multiple choice exam. The exam is dated for sure, and my favorite question asked about the correct brush to paint a window with. A 2-inch sash brush, of course. Would you guys have known that? I wouldn't have known that.
No idea.
Yeah. That was actually covered in the 40-hour course, but I don't exactly see what that has to do with building safety, and I doubt anyone at the big window companies is using a brush for much. Is this type of licensing process common? I've heard about a few states that collect a fee and hand out a builder's license, and a few others that might not even require that, Jerry. Yeah, I think it totally depends on where you are, Jerry. In Pennsylvania, it was pretty lax, most of the places I built. In Connecticut, it seems to be statewide licensing is a fee and an insurance check. I don't know that there's even a test, but Ian, you probably have some familiarity with this.
In Wisconsin, it's some continuing education stuff and then a pretty simple licensing exam.
What did they ask you?
Honestly, I don't remember. It's been a couple of years since I took it so that I could get it for permitting my house.
Did you know how to paint a window if they would have asked?
You know, they didn't ask that, and I'm glad they didn't. I would have failed on that one.
Jerry's email is great. He touches on a lot of cool things. I love his, consumables list. There was some good stuff on there.
Yeah, and I'm happy to hear that somebody else uses the drywall ceiling grid because you and Brian scoffed at me for bringing that up as a feasible solution.
I think it's awesome. I mean, I've seen it, and I've actually tried to find someone who's used it for a feature article, but it's very expensive and I think rare for that reason.
Yeah.
I think my poo-pooing it in that instance was, it's pretty easy to strap a ceiling and drywall if you're going to put up drywall anyway. And steel resilient channel and steel framing, I think, do a lot of the same things as this grid.
True.
Ian, did you have to get an insurance policy to become licensed in Wisconsin?
Because I was just going to do my own house, I chose to purchase a bond.
Okay.
So I had to have I forget the size bond, if it was 25 or 50,000 to have my license. So it's just another form of insurance, really.
This comes from John. It's a long one, folks, so bear with me. Hey, FHB crew, I got turned on to the podcast by your friends at BS and Beer, who I stumbled across looking for a low-carbon foundation idea. I work in the decarbonization space, and I think the direction you guys are shifting the building industry is very important. However, on a recent BS and Beer show, Mike Main showed a graph showing that around 80% of the average code-built home's carbon footprint is in the first decade from its embodied carbon, the emissions resulting from making the building materials. You guys touch on the carbon cost of materials now and then, but I think this issue doesn't get quite the attention it deserves in the industry in general. Just look at all the books and resources about net zero, passive house, etc. But just one book that's really about embodied carbon, Build Beyond Zero. I think you might do well to bring the authors of that book on the show for a pro talk. I would love that. I also thought this would be of interest. You mentioned vinyl siding recently, comparing it to cement siding, I believe, both of which have high embodied carbon. Well, Andrew also mentioned milling your own lumber from logs. Take a look at this clapboard attachment that you can add to a portable bandsaw mill. It's not a wood miser, which don't have to be expensive, Ian. You can even get an electric one that plugs into a 40-amp dryer outlet for $6,000. I had to look at that thing. Did you guys look at that?
I was thinking we could just go halvesies on that, Patrick.
I would argue that $4,000 one that he sent the link to is prohibitively expensive for how little it can do.
It's small, right? That's the issue. But there's more to the story here than that. I've been hauling logs out of a guy's yard with my Prius on a little trailer that I got in trade for mowing of someone's lawn. Speaking of cant hooks, I just turned a 4-foot ash handle for mine so I could roll those 32-inch, 8-foot white pine logs onto my trailer solo. By the way, PVs are similarly log rolling hooks, but with a spike on the end that Andrew mentioned. I'm not done yet, so obviously don't read this whole essay. But when I heard you mention surfers in Lake Erie on an earlier episode, I knew I had to write into you about it. Check out the pic attached of me surfing Lake Superior in February 2021 in 5 degrees, not including the 30-mile-per-hour wind chill. That was right before the bay completely froze over. I surfed the lake every month that year. That one was only a 3-hour session. You guys had to have seen this photo, right?
Yeah.
Can anyone adequately describe it?
Sort of like the evil person from Frosty the Snowman or something like that, or one of the puppet Christmas shows.
Yeah, there is sort of a villainous look to somebody who's basically an icicle.
Yeah.
He looks to be thrilled and happy with himself. So,
yeah.
I mean, he says, what, a question? Yes, I built my own home from fully scribed logs in Upper Michigan, pick attached. But we sold and moved to Maine. It has balmy when you're surfing now. And I'm looking to build a totally different house here with a pier and beam foundation to keep it low carbon. Is anyone combining double stud construction with a service cavity by having the inside stud wall inward of the vapor retarder? I imagine having a big gap, maybe 6 to 8 inches from the inside of my outer studs to the outside of my inner studs, where I'd fasten the vapor retarder, making the whole assembly up to 16 inches thick. I'd dense pack cellulose into the outer 10 or 12 inches of the assembly. I've heard you can create vertical cavities with mesh to ease the dense packing. I'm planning to use board sheathing outside. I hope to just use house wrap over that held by vertical 1x3s to nail the clapboards to. So do you guys take it to mean he's going to put the house wrap right on the outside edge of the studs and then put siding over top of that? Is that what it sounds like to you?
That was what I thought in my first reading of it, but now hearing you read it, I feel like he's going to use board sheathing and put the house wrap over that and
Yeah.
do 1x3 rain screen.
Okay. I think that's important to our assembly here.
Yeah.
Inside, I'll do tongue and groove. I'd really love to know what low carbon options are for vapor retarders and WRBs. Best, John. John, thank you so much for the fantastic email. That was wonderful. So can we quickly paraphrase what John's stack up is? He has a double stud wall. I believe he's going to put board sheathing on the exterior, a WRB on top of that, and tongue and groove paneling on the inside. And he mentioned dividing up the double stud cavity with Insulweb to make it dense packable.
I think you got it.
Mm-hmm.
Any problems with this?
I want to say Stebrick has something very similar to this in his cut and paste cold climate building book. So I think this is a normal assembly.
I think it's a pretty normal assembly, except I just worry the one part about it is there's no, it's a very difficult air barrier to make board sheathing airtight. So something, either the WRB is going to have to be made really tight and painstakingly executed, or as Ian suggested, self-adhered one would probably make it easier.
That was the one thought I had, is this seems like a very labor-intensive wall assembly to get right.
Did you see John's previous house? This is nothing for him.
Yeah. If you're doing this work yourself, it's it's going to be way easier than scribing logs.
His house is beautiful. I mean, what a beautiful handcrafted house. The closest thing I've seen to John's house is the house that Sam Maloof, the renowned chair maker, built for himself, right? Andrew, right? Mm-hmm. All stuff he got locally.
And then the state of California moved it when they put a highway in, and it's still there. And it's a super awesome complex. It's like a sort of a little museum now, although they're still making furniture there too.
I take it you've been.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Was it as amazing as I've heard?
Oh, I mean, it was like a life-changing experience. You like see, like I like read his autobiography, and it's like sort of the idea that like you can start a house with like one room and continue to build on, and like as you're doing that, you're learning more skills, and your like trim work and carpentry is becoming like more intricate, and like you also kind of see his style develop based on like where you are in the home and when he built it, and then also like you can see that mimicked in kind of his furniture too. It's like an autobiography, I guess.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Are you a Maloof furniture fan, Ian, Jeff?
It's not my style. I find it pretty interesting, though, that you can do all of that with the tools that he used.
It's not exactly my aesthetic either, but I definitely respect the craft and artistry of it all. How about you, Jeff? Do you like it?
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with Ian. It's like it's really cool, but not really my thing.
The house is a more eclectic mix of trim and stuff, right, Andrew?
Yeah, and there's like, like the house feels like his furniture, except like maybe even a little bit more natural and more raw. Like you can like tell some of the pieces are just trees that have been, sanded or whatever. It's sort of reminiscent of Wharton Esherick's house in Pennsylvania too, a little bit, except much larger.
Yeah, I think Sam had some serious cash by the last third of his career.
Yeah.
This comes from Taylor. Hey, FHB crew, I have an upcoming project doing some maintenance on a classic pink bathroom in Austin, Texas. It's a single story with a slab foundation, and there's a crack running through the middle of the room. There have been no problems with water welling up through it or anything else so far as I know. Here's a photo. My initial thought was to pull off a few tiles on a few inches of either side of the crack, save them, and hopefully not break any in the demolition. Of course, some are already broken, but keep that to a minimum. Then I'd use a crack pack epoxy foundation repair system to seal up the crack and grind it smooth before putting the tiles back down. My question is this overkill or underkill? A crack pack is not cheap, and I wonder if it would stop the grout from opening up again. On the other hand, do I really just need to put down some mesh tape and thin set under the tiles? Or option 3, do I just use a pigmented sealant like Mapacil T Plus or Polyblend sanded caulk without pulling any tiles at all? It's just a cosmetic problem as far as I'm aware of. And if there's no good answer, the owners can live with it as is. But I'd like to give them some informed options. That's why I'm asking y'all. It takes everyone working together to preserve these beautiful spaces for future generations. Thank you all for doing your part. Did you guys see the perfectly preserved bathroom in this house?
It's pretty great.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do we think about this? I'm going to ask Jeff first because he's so practical.
I mean, I kind of feel like if it's, without having the history, I think, it's probably an initial settling, the concrete slab cracked a long time ago and hasn't moved. So I think
a shrinkage crack, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think probably the minimal fix would probably be okay.
Other thoughts?
I agree. Start with the cheap, easy fix and work your way back.
And if it's not causing further problems, I think that, reinforces your approach. Why go looking for bigger headaches?
There's also zero chance you're going to get those tile off without breaking them.
Yeah.
That's my assessment too. Yeah, that's my assessment too. I do think, and maybe listeners who are familiar with getting period tile, I do believe that some of this stuff is still available. And if anyone knows about that, I would love to hear from you. I think the sanded caulk in the a good color to make it less obvious is a great approach because I think it's probably reversible. You could always dig it back out. I mean, if the epoxy goes south, either in the putting it in or down the road, like how the heck do you fix that? Yeah.
Yeah. Is this why in a more modern tile installation you'd use a decoupling membrane?
Yep. That's why even though I put my bathrooms in the basement and have a concrete slab under it, I still use the decoupling mat.
I'm guessing those were like not even in someone's mind's eye when this house was built, right?
Probably not.
Yeah. I think it's a pretty simple answer, Taylor, and that's to do as little as possible. I would try the sanded caulk. You guys want to give a vote for that or leave it alone?
Yeah.
I
First,
tried
do
the
no
sanded
harm.
caulk. It's an easy one.
What'd you say, Jeff?
First, do no harm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the right approach here. This comes from Chris. Dear fine folks at the FHB podcast, I'm building myself a small, conditioned, shop-type building. We never get these questions. In Climate Zone 7A, Manitoba, Canada. And now that the walls are up and sheathed, I'm worried about the vapor barrier detail spec'd by the engineer. I've attached a sketch of what he called out. I was in a rush when installing the vapor barrier and insulation under the slab, and while I was surprised that he wanted the vapor barrier under the insulation, I didn't think much about the footing vapor barrier not wrapping up the wall to meet the walls. I'm concerned about continuity of the air seal, but more concerned about water wicking up into the sheathing from the EPS on the sides of the slab and through the unsealed gap between the EPS and the slab. The EPS is stuck to the concrete, so pulling it off would mean needing to buy new insulation. Do you think my concerns are warranted? Should I rip off the EPS off the sides and continue the vapor barrier up to the OSB? Are there any solutions? I think Chris is getting upset here. He's worried, okay? He says, I have no building experience and still don't really know if I have the skills to get this building built. But I'm a GBA and FHB subscriber and grew up reading my dad's back issues of FHB and Fine Woodworking. That reading, along with listening to your podcast, gave me the confidence to jump in head first. You should probably have a warning about that. As an aside, I was happy to hear the ideal gas law cited on at least 2 episodes. Understanding the ideal gases can help you avoid exploding spray paint cans on a hot day or help you pull a perfect pint at the end of the day. I find that most science questions can be answered by saying PV equals nRT, and even if it doesn't answer the question, it usually ends the conversation. I love the show and every Taunton publication I have read. Thank you for all the work that you do. Chris, thanks a lot. That was awesome. Oh boy, I think Chris is unnecessarily worried here. Am I right? Yeah.
I think so.
I think so.
I mean, if you really want to be crazy about this, Chris, get some liquid applied flashing. And,
Exactly.
I mean, maybe in decades past, this would have been a bigger deal, but now we have amazing chemistry to solve these kinds of problems.
I think he's got a lot of options. The liquid applied flashing being the easiest to install.
Not the most inexpensive.
Not the most
Right.
inexpensive, but easiest to install.
What do you think another way to go might be?
I think there's probably a membrane that he could use underneath the wall that could go out over the EPS if he wanted to go that route. I'm sure there's plenty of tapes that he could use, which would be very simple to install and probably cost prohibitive.
I don't know. Chris brought an engineer into this build. Maybe Chris is not giving us the whole story, but it's a small building, right? We're assuming. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, Jeff?
I let Ian be the expert on this one because I have no thoughts on it.
Tape or liquid applied
I
flashing?
think liquid applied seems simple and straightforward. Tape just makes me nervous.
Especially close to grade, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ian, concur?
Yeah, that's why you'd have to use a tape that can be used at grade, which those are some of the most expensive ones out there.
I bet they're the most awesome, though.
They are.
What's an example of one of these that you've used?
I've used both the Siga Fentrum and the Proclima Contega.
Are they similarly priced
Yeah,
and similar performance?
they almost feel like the exact same tape. But I think it comes down to which one you can get. Proclima stuff you can order pretty reliably online, but some people have a Siga dealer locally, which makes their products easier to get.
And I presume less expensive.
Possibly. I've found most of these tapes to be about the same price.
Andrew, have you visited the European tape factory like Ben Bogey has?
I have not been.
I think that's something we have to put on our, bucket list for sure.
Yeah, so Colin on our team went this summer, and we've only just started sharing some of the footage he captured, but he's also going to be working on a feature about how they build over there because it's.
Have you found it interesting?
Very, very interesting, and it feels like decades ahead of what we're doing here. Not only as far as the building techniques go, but the way the trades are organized, and sort of the respect that the trades get there too. It for whatever reason it feels like it doesn't have the same stigma that the trades have had historically in the United States.
I gotta suspect that's the training, the part of the culture, right? It's
View
gotta
as
start at the beginning.
professional career.
yeah.
Yeah.
This comes from Mike.
This
It
is
took
not
some-
about a smart house, this question, by the way.
Ian is, offhandedly reminding us that our after show is about smart homes, and that is an understatement. This is definitely not a smart house. It took some head scratching to figure out what was going on here since her electrical comes in from underground. At first glance, I was very puzzled. I knew there was no way it was coming off the roof. She became my client when she was put in a situation where she had to find out if find a new home quickly, and with a shortage of houses on the market in our area. She found her best option, which was a new modular that was way overpriced, just over $510,000. It had some serious grading issues around the home. Well, that is also an understatement. So, Andrew, do you mind explaining what the video showed?
So the video basically shows water pouring out of the electrical service on this home, and like lots and lots, like not a trickle, but
pouring out
and
of
then
the,
like I expect to like look up and see, you know, some sort of like water dumping on top of the electricals, but there's like nothing. It's like the electrical service is coming from underground, and there's water pouring out of it, and like just at this one spot. It's baffling and incredibly scary.
My mouth is still left hanging open after viewing this footage. It is just water pouring out of the bottom of the meter socket and the adjacent like service cabinet. So Mike met this client, and she consulted with me in an effort to see how much trouble she would be in for if she went ahead and purchased the home. I explained to her the things that needed the most attention. The current monsoon season came on fast and hard, and there was little time for any of the work to be done. So what does grading have anything to do with water coming out of this electrical box? Interestingly, nothing that is happening on her property, although the crawl space is indeed filled with water. Her home and her two neighbors' homes are built on low areas. The builder/developer that built all these homes so poorly addressed the control of water runoff in a way that the water filled up the power transformer, running through the conduit underground and pushing out through the electrical boxes of all three homes. So all three had the same geyser event occurring. The transformer is now rusted through and needs replaced. However, due to the 100-year rain that happened 2 weeks later, the issue is no longer the most urgent. Once again, we will see a complete builder/developer failure with no concern for the homeowner. What are we missing here? Builder education, code enforcement, pride in our work, all of the above? Hoping for change in standards and keeping craft alive. Mike, wow, what a tale. Wow. We're all just like, what? How many things could go wrong?
In some ways, I think this gets chalked up to building houses where houses don't belong. That chunk of property was likely dirt cheap for a very good reason. That building anything there that was going to last was going to require a lot of expensive excavation work that was not done by that developer.
So who's to blame? Why wasn't this work done? Whose job should it have been to see that this wasn't a disaster? And I think it's fair to call it a disaster. This is a flood.
That's a tough one. Is it code enforcement, right, of what he's listed there, builder education? We've had so many questions as of late about licensing in different parts of North America. Do we know where this question is coming from? Is this an area that doesn't have the robust licensing of a Massachusetts or Connecticut? And the red earth makes you think American Southwest.
I thought the same thing, or California. I don't know why. It seems like a dry place, or at least typically dry. I should have asked Mike. I'm sorry I didn't. What do you think about this, Jeff?
I kind of fall back on the house never should have been able to be built there. It should not have been permitted there.
Andrew?
So, I'm reading this book, How to Build a House. It was written by Larry Hahn, and it was for the Habitat for Humanity folks, as like a book that you could give to somebody who's never built a house before, so they could like understand the process. And one of the things that I thought was like very very interesting was that like Larry's advice was, if you can, go camp on the property for a little while and just like observe the natural phenomena. And it's sort of, so like I envisioned like camping on this property and like being swept away in a flood and like, never getting to take the next step. But I also, this is an issue. Like we have folks that need houses, that need housing. We don't have enough in the United States right now. And, in order for a house to like serve all of its functions, it also has to be located near the rest of the stuff you need in your life. But there's also like I feel like, America in general is like very litigious, and like this thing is going to be in court for a long time. And like, the builder developer will likely go bankrupt and like probably has a corporate entity that's like easy to get out of. And so I think it's like, it's not just builder education and code enforcement. It's like it's like a bigger societal issue. But it's also like, I don't even know how you would inspect drainage other than inspect drainage in like a relatively efficient fashion on building sites across the country. Like I think there's a little bit that you can do if you're requiring stuff like at your footings and draining to daylight where you can, but there's so many other things in a house to look at that any more inspections would like make the cost of housing go up even more than it is.
All good points. It's so easy to say, this house should have been built. Well, this woman needed a house. There was nothing else to buy, right? I think good builders build good houses. Inexperienced builders sometimes build good houses. Bad builders pretty consistently build bad houses to save money. And we don't know what's going on here, but it's clearly going to take some expensive work to make, at a minimum, water stop pouring out of the meter socket. It's funny in the conversation about the Larry Hahn book. I'm glad you brought that up, because there was some discussion in the group about, site work, and can you make a wet site buildable or safe? And of course you can, but it's very expensive, and no one wants to pay for that. Custom home builders, I'm sure Ian would agree, don't like the expenses of rock buried in the ground and landscape fabric that they never see. If they're smart, they see the value in it, but it's not what they want to spend money on. And certainly developers who are trying to make a profit on a $510,000 house, which sounds like it's pretty close to the entry in this market, certainly doesn't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars on site work.
I think it's also a stretch to assume that the builder developer did this with no concern for the homeowner. Yeah. Like there's some evil Montgomery Burns type cartoon character in the background counting money. Generally speaking, I think that's another problem in our industry, is that we as contractors like to expect the worst from our contemporaries and peers. This may have just been a developer that didn't really know what they were doing and had no idea of the drainage requirements of the site. But if they built all three of those homes, it is surprising that they wouldn't have had to go through some type of a site plan review with some government entity that would have said you have to do something drainage wise. Now, if they were told that and blatantly didn't do it, then that is with no concern for the people who would buy the properties from them.
Well, Mike, I hope it fosters some additional conversation, because as Andrew points out, it's more of a societal problem. There are no easy answers. What do you think happens to the smart home features when water is pouring out of the electrical system? Is there a monitor for that on your system, Andrew?
I think you get like a little notification on your phone that said, build an ark. That's
Keith writes in, hey there, I love listening to your podcast. It's full of great stuff. My dad always subscribed to Fine Homebuilding, so I was used to checking out the articles when I was a teen and in my 20s. Many of the magazines lying around were from the 80s and 90s era, because at a certain point he said he was sick of FHB doing articles about building McMansions. Is that true, Andrew? I don't think that's true. I don't think Fine Homebuilding's ever been about McMansions, but he goes on to say, my dad is pretty minimalist guy, so he's recently started subscribing again because he's determined the magazine is taking a better turn. Anyhow, I'm writing because lately I've been getting into small excavation jobs, and I haven't been able to find many articles or podcasts or guides about it. I have a 12,000-pound Cat 305 mini excavator, a 14-foot dump trailer, and a full-size diesel truck. I've done a lot of carpentry and construction stuff over the years, and just lately, this small excavation thing has been kind of fun for a change. Check out my website, and I'll put a link on our podcast page to alpropertiesllc.com. So yeah, are you aware of any articles from past FHB issues or cool podcasts or books that get into kind of small one-man show residential excavation stuff? I'm on the Central Oregon coast. So there's lots of rain, logging, trees, and gravel driveway stuff. Thanks, Keith. All right, Keith. Anyone got advice for Keith?
I went straight to YouTube and found somebody called Heavy Metal Learning, where he goes through how to operate various pieces of heavy equipment. And he has a lot of videos up, and the couple I watched were pretty cool.
I agree with Keith that taking up excavation for fun would be
Fun.
like that's my favorite part of this letter. Yeah. I was going to mention that Brian Euler on Instagram, they recently purchased a small excavator that they've been using for a lot of stuff on their builds. And you can pick up some good tips and tricks from him too.
Jeff, any thoughts?
No, other than, it sounds like fun, but
Yeah, right? So I thought of YouTube immediately. I watch a couple YouTube presenters, Diesel Creek and Andrew Camerata. I don't know what these guys really do in their real lives, because it seems like they spend every waking hour making YouTube content, but it's fantastic. And both of them do a lot of equipment stuff, heavy, little, whatever, but machinery is their shtick. And I find it fascinating. The one guy is near where I grew up, so the scenery and the things he's doing are probably not what you're doing in Oregon, but you might learn some stuff. I'm going to appeal to our Fine Homebuilding crew that we need this, right? We need like basics of, I don't even know what would this feature be?
I sort of feel like it's the guy who needs to get going on a job and can't find anyone to help him with it, so he goes down to the local rental desk, and like that's where the article starts. It sort of reminds me, Ian, of mentioning having some folks with concrete skills on your crew to be able to get jobs going. Do you guys do excavation at all?
We don't. We have one excavation contractor that we use almost exclusively, and he's our guy. So we wait for him, but he's out there. He's not making YouTube content. He's digging holes.
Right. I think anyone who's been a builder for any period of time would say finding a good excavator is key to success, and they seem to have some voodoo that allows them to read topography and know what's underground without knowing what's underground, and be able to anticipate water problems in the future and this kind of stuff.
For our house project, the excavator was the first trade partner that I brought on board, and I made sure to contact them a year in advance. And even still, they barely found time to do my mound septic system.
I want to tell Keith something that was pointed out to me earlier in my building journalistic career, is that excavation contractors, they're in at the early part of the job. It's more likely you're going to get paid. So I think that's a good place to have a business, honestly. At the end, when everyone's pinching dollars, you don't have to be part of those conversations, right? Andrew, do you want to remind folks about our after show?
Yeah, so on the after show today, we're going to be talking about smart houses, smart homes, and how smart we'd like our homes to be. I think folks will be surprised, although maybe not. I don't know. And again, that's our all-access members-only after show. So if you're a member of Fine Homebuilding, you can access this content on our website. If you're not a member, I'd encourage you to become one. We've got, more than 40 years of archives that you can access alongside a bunch of other great content and videos. And then you also get to hear, us ramble a little bit after after the show and really get a sense of who we are as people. So it's
I think Andrew's I think it's get me on a rant.
And Patrick is not one to go on rants, so it's probably the hardest part of my job, but the highlight of my week. So tune in for that. I think it'll be a fun conversation.
I'd like to remind folks who haven't checked it out to please check out the touchatrade.org website to learn more about the event we're having in Kent, Connecticut, October 22nd. It should be a really fun time. I might be raising expectations too high, but the building science community has had their building science summer camp, and it's my hope that the folks with their hands-on community can have the same thing at this event, and hopefully it'll spread throughout the country. So if you haven't checked it out, touchatrade.org, you can learn more about it, and I hope you will. Stay safe, everybody. Keep craft alive. I should have done the outro. Hold on a second. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks very much for listening. Keep craft alive. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you very much for listening.